Please observe the Parliamentary. Lady. Country needs Please, Your Majesty.
January 1660. In the streets of London, unpaid soldiers clash with civilians. The confusion breeds fear of another civil war, and much talk on who should rule the country.
My lord told me that he did believe that Charles, the son of Charles I, would return from exile in France to be king. There's still much debate about bringing in someone as protector again, but my lord was sure that he would not last very long. No, nor the king neither, unless he carry himself very soberly and well.
Why such confusion on who should rule the country? Since the death of Cromwell in 1658, no one could agree over who should succeed him. With the country in chaos, General Monk, the leader of the army in Scotland, marched south. The powerful landowning gentry in their country houses wondered what his intentions were.
I heard it whispered in the galleries. Last night the city men feasted General Monk in Vintner's Hall, and a toast was made to the king. And General Monk smiled.
Smiled, eh? But that's certain then. Monk means to bring back the king. Oliver Cromwell will be turning in his grave.
Or maybe Monk smiles because he means to take the crown himself. Another thug soldier in control.
Someone has to be in control. Whole bloomin' countries fall into pieces. Better a thug soldier like Monk than Charles bloomin' Stuart. French fart, that's what he is. Can you see him towing the Parliament line? I think not. And mark my words, we bring him back, he'll string us up, every man jack of us. I fought against his father, I did. I fought for the good old cause. Toasting the king? It's a mockery.
Well, I think it's rather sweet. And I think after all this chaos, it'll be rather nice to curtsy to someone who doesn't rule by the bayonet, even if that someone does wear a rather silly foreign wig.
Such secret royalist longings were fulfilled on the 29th of May, 1660.
This day, His Majesty Charles II came to London on his 30th birthday after a sad and long exile. He was greeted by thousands of people, all shouting with inexpressible joy, the streets all strewn with flowers and hung with tapestry, the bells ringing, fountains running with wine. I stood on the Strand and beheld it and blessed God.
This was a new situation. Kings were meant to be all-powerful, but this king had been invited to rule by Parliament. So who was really in control? At first, Parliament gave Charles every chance. He was given a regular income, could choose his own ministers, control the army. But did he have the character to survive?
The silliness of the king is well known, playing with his dog during council meetings and not minding business. I've even heard it said that as the Dutch fleet sailed up the River Medway, he was chasing a moth around the room with one of his mistresses.
Mighty fine.
I thought so.
And it goes with the rest of me.
He was a prince of many virtues and a great many faults, but he would doubtless have been an excellent prince had he been less addicted to women.
In the king's arms, at the corner of Luton Lane, calling for beer.
Beer? There's a kiss in the dark for a lass, I know.
Was there more to Charles than this merry monarch? Many said that he hid the deeper side to his character.
Charles chose rather to be shut off than troubled, and it was this part of his personality that helped keep the peace, for he was in a very difficult political situation, and a wrong word could have brought about his downfall.
He had a softness of temper that charmed all who came near him. He hated business, but when it was necessary, he would stay as long as his ministers had work for him.
Charles was determined to use his wit and cunning to survive. This was no easy task. beneath the surface the country still bled from years of political and religious conflict.
Tell you one thing about this king, damn sight better than being governed by the mob. Didn't like that at all. Parliament stuffed with tradesmen, boot boys giving orders, damned uncomfortable.
Smell my perfume, as worn by the Queen of Bohemia.
You got me old job back to here. Local magistrate, village idiot, booted off the bench and good riddance.
Does a marvellous job in covering the smell of pox, which, as they say, is rife in the court.
It's just like the old days. God, king, parliament, peasants doff their hats, step out of line, flog 'em.
At the ball last night, a lady-in-waiting gave birth to one of the king's bastards in full view of the company.
Good Lord.
Charles's dandies, half of them naked, stood around and clapped. Can you imagine?
And I hear he sits at the theatre with a woman on each knee, and women, not boys, play all the female roles. It's disgusting.
He's just like his father.
He's too hoity-toity.
He thinks he's a god. He goes up to diseased beggars and touches them, imagining they'll then skip off like lambs.
And everything's French. I do hate the French. French food, French silks, French silver.
French religion.
I beg your pardon.
Well, what do you think, brother? His mother's Catholic, his sister's Catholic, his wife's Catholic. He keeps it quiet, but tongues are beginning to wag.
Charles did have quiet Catholic leanings, but kept his beliefs to himself. He was naturally tolerant and had promised that people would be allowed to worship as they wished. But Parliament believed in one state church, the Anglican Church, with the king at its head. They brought in heavy penalties for those who refused to join it.
For a peaceful nation, the people all have to be of the same religion. So all churches and chapels are to use the 1662 prayer book, and anyone who refuses will have to leave their job.
So to survive, Charles knew he had to show loyalty to the Church of England. In return, the church was prepared to support him.
The Church of England glories in nothing more than she is the truest friend of kings and of kingly government of any church in the world.
Many Puritans refused to accept the Church of England and died in jail. But it was the Catholics who were to haunt Charles's reign.
Oh, dear Sir Ralph, I am sorry to be the messenger of so dismal news, for poor London is almost burnt down. It began on Saturday night in Pudding Lane and has burnt ever since. We have packed up all our goods to leave, but cannot get a cart at any price.
It made me weep to see it. The churches, houses, and all on fire. Everybody endeavouring to remove their goods and fling them into the river or bring them into boats. The ground was so hot as almost to scorch my shoes. I saw the cathedral bells melting and the walls tumbling down. Meanwhile, the ignorant mob vented their rage against the Roman Catholics and Frenchmen. A blacksmith in my presence, meeting an innocent Frenchman, knocked him down with an iron bar.
Monday morning produced first a suspicion and then a general agreement that this fire was not an accident, rather that it was the result of a conspiracy, the Dutch or French. Shortly after, all the Roman Catholics were blamed as well.
The Great Fire of London wasn't caused by any Catholic conspiracy. That people believed it was shows the depth of popular suspicion of Roman Catholics. These fears grew when in 1676, the heir to the throne, Charles's brother James, refused to attend the Church of England's Easter Communion. Rumors began to spread.
Have you heard?
Is it true?
A cellar overflowing with swords and powder.
Blooming Catholics, mark my words.
And there was talk of poisoning the king.
Lord have mercy, we'll all be murdered in our beds.
Oh, don't be silly, brother. It's just tittle-tattle.
Oh, you would say that, wouldn't you? You at court all day, picking up their fancy ways. What on earth is that on your face?
A beauty spot.
Spots are beautiful now, are they? It's blooming Catholic. What I want to know is if this monarch you like so much is so free with the ladies, why hasn't he got a strapping young son now to carry on the Protestant faith?
I hear he's got plenty of sons.
Yes, but he didn't have the sense to marry their mothers, did he?
No, shame.
Shame? Shame? Is that all you can say? Charlie boy pops off, his blooming Catholic brother James takes the crown. That's if his blooming Catholic brother has the decency to wait. I've heard there's Catholic rebellion at boiling point, and these Frenchies are just itching to invade.
The rumors were fueled by more anti-Catholic scaremongering.
Imagine you see troops of papists ravishing your wives and daughters and plundering your houses. Casting your eye towards Smithfield, imagine you see your father or your mother or some of your nearest and dearest relations tied to a stake in the midst of flames. This is what happened the last time papacy reigned among us.
In Parliament, there were even those prepared to stop James from becoming king.
The Duke of York, being a Roman Catholic, should be prevented from inheriting the crown. If not, nothing is more obvious than that a total change of religion within these kingdoms would ensue.
This was going too far for some. God had chosen the king, they believed, so his will should not be interfered with. In 1685, Charles had a stroke and died. James succeeded him. There was now a Catholic on the throne. This frightened many, and James needed the skill his brother had shown and more to survive the crisis.
I shall make it my aim to preserve this government both in church and state as by law established. I shall always take care to support and defend it.
If James had stuck to this, he might not have run into trouble, but he did not. Unlike Charles, he failed to understand what he could and could not do. He believed, perhaps too strongly, in the divine right of kings.
Kings are accountable for their actions to no one but God, and it is the duty of subjects to pay allegiance to him and to observe his laws.
He was naturally sincere and a very firm friend, but his judgment was not good. He overestimated royal power and was a confirmed Roman Catholic.
Having been called by Almighty God to rule these kingdoms, I think of nothing but the spread of the Catholic religion. This is the true service of God for which I am willing to sacrifice everything.
It was James's blatant Catholicism that was spreading unease.
Sat on the King's bench dishing out the King's law since history began, blooming born to it. Now this so-and-so Johnny Papist king of ours boots us off and tips some Catholic the job. Act of Parliament, Catholics can't hold office. Trouble is this so-and-so Johnny Papist king got no respect for the law.
But it's the king's law, brother. Means he can do what he wants.
Now listen, sister, I'm a reasonable man, but certain things a king just can't do. Certain things just not English. One, king can't muck about with Parliament. It's what the blooming war was for. Two, king can't muck about with the church. We're Protestant and proud of it.
Squire and parson.
Sorry?
Squire and parson rule the land.
Ah, exactly. King had better not forget it.
Anglicans thought they were saved from having to choose between king and church, for James's heir was his daughter Mary, a Protestant, married to William of Orange, King of Holland. But in June 1688, after 15 childless years, the unthinkable happened. James's wife gave birth to a son.
About 2 o'clock, we heard the guns fire and the bells ring for the birth of the young prince. This was surprising, it having been thought that the Queen was not due until next month. The birth will cause much argument.
It was 10:15.
It was 11:15.
I heard it from my serving girl, who heard it from some usher.
I heard it from an usher, who heard it from a serving girl.
This prince that was born.
This heir to the throne.
He's not the Queen's at all.
There was a switch.
A substitution.
In a warming pan.
The real prince was born dead.
But needing an heir.
A Catholic heir.
They smuggled in this brat.
A miller's boy.
A butcher's lad.
Slipped him under the sheets.
Presented him to the court.
With a ringing of bells.
And cannons fired.
And bonfires lit.
As if we're to rejoice.
But the king has an heir.
A Catholic heir.
And we Protestants duped.
All Englishmen duped.
It's a scandal.
An outrage.
A downright disgrace.
My dear sister, you can't imagine how annoyed I have been that I was out of London when the Queen was brought to bed, for I shall never now be satisfied whether the child be true or false. It may be it is our brother, but where one believes it, 1,000 do not.
Whether the baby was the real prince or not didn't matter. He was Catholic. Leading politicians joined together and wrote to James's son-in-law, William of Orange.
The people are so generally unhappy with the present conduct of the government that Your Highness may be assured that the vast majority of people would support Your Highness at your first landing.
On the 5th of November, William landed in Devon.
For both the Protestant religion and the laws and the liberties of the nation. Our experience is intended for no other design but to have a free and lawful Parliament assembled as soon as possible.
Marvelous. Marvellous.
Don't you even have the teeniest twinge of conscience, sister? For all his faults, James is the rightful king.
Oh, piffle, brother. Royal is as royal does, that's what I say. Now compare. William, the Protestant champion, marching splendid at the head of a troop of horse, and James, running hither and thither like a demented corporal, and scurrying into exile disguised, so they say, as a fisherman. My money's on William.
Perhaps you're right. I only hope he does as he's told. There are mutterings at the club. He's somewhat hungry for power.
Better a Protestant bully than a dithering Catholic.
Quite.
Anyway, how could he compete with the sheer weight of the landed gentry? You're all so gloriously gouty and pot-bellied, so marvellously English. Kings, they're just puppets. And we, brother, hold the strings.
February 1689. William and Mary are declared joint monarchs, but with strings attached. Parliament made sure that future monarchs would do as they were told.
The monarch will no longer be able to suspend Parliament, raise money, or keep a standing army during peacetime without the consent of Parliament. Every king and queen of this realm is to be Protestant and to marry a Protestant. For Parliament, free and frequent elections.
So the monarchy had gone to the ultimate test and lost. England still had a monarchy, but the landed classes now ruled the country through Parliament. But what kind of Britain did they build?
London is certainly the greatest commercial city in the world. Her merchants have founded companies which bring money and merchandise from all over the world. Trade makes the difference as to rich and poor, between one nation and another. Trade nourishes industry, industry leads to trade, and trade to great wealth.
This newfound wealth went to the rich landed classes. These new rulers of Britain wanted buildings to show what they stood for: order, balance, and the growth of a new empire to rival the Romans.
We entered the grounds through the lodge and drove along the banks of the river, which used to be just a little stream, but is now made into the finest lake I have seen anywhere. The trees, planted on the top of the hills to the right as we entered, are very beautiful. We have adopted a beautiful variety of designs, graceful, delicate, and skillfully arranged. We have introduced a range of ceilings, friezes, and decoration, and have added grace and beauty to the whole.
The prosperity of Britain was setting loose forces that would eventually sweep away the power of the land. An era of expansion, trade, and industry.
There's a free programme guide to accompany the History File series. Copies are available from the usual number 081 746 1111. And reminder that next term History File focuses on medieval realms. In 25 minutes.